Welcome to the Vegan Voice. Today I'm going to be looking into the psychology of belief, how our beliefs are impacted by our behaviours, and how we can use this knowledge to help improve our activism. Now I'm going to ask you to think back to a moment in your life, a time when you did something you know you probably shouldn't. Maybe you skipped going to the gym, called in sick from work when you felt fine, or had that extra beer when you knew you really shouldn't. Now, once you picture that event in your head, I want you to think about how you reacted afterwards. What did you say or think to yourself about this action after the fact? In all likelihood, you may have thought something like, "I've been overworking myself anyway, I needed a rest." Or, "I don't spend enough time on myself, I needed to take a break and have some fun." Now, I'm not saying these statements are necessarily false. They may in fact be entirely true, but that isn't the point. We often assume that our actions are inferred by our beliefs. But what if I told you that it wasn't a one-way street? That in actuality, our behaviour can also directly alter our beliefs. A study by Aronson and Carl Smith, conducted in 1963, investigated how children's attitudes changed towards desirable toys once they were forbidden to play with them. The researchers asked the children to select from a range of toys which one they wanted to play with the most. They then forbade the children from playing with said toy under threat of punishment varying in severity, and after observing the children playing with the non-forbidden toys, asked them again to reassess which toys were most desirable. In all cases, the children rated the forbidden toy as less desirable afterwards. However, the most interesting result was that those who were given the less severe threats of punishment seemed to devalue the toys the most. A follow-up study in 1971 by Biagio and Rodriguez found the exact same thing. The lesser the threat of punishment, the more the object of desire is devalued. Ultimately, why this occurs boils down to our own self-rationalization of our actions. If the threat of punishment was very mild, especially as described in the Biagio and Rodriguez study as having a low probability of detection, then the participants rationalize that their avoidance of the desirable action was their own decision, rather than a behaviour prompted by an external actor. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm not suggesting we start subtly threatening non-vegans to change their behaviour. I'm simply using these studies to highlight the point. Our beliefs can be affected by our behaviours, especially when we believe those decisions to be freely made of our own volition. It is also essential that we understand that perceptions around why an action was carried out can have a huge impact on our perception. For example, a study by Lepper and Green in 1973 looked at how different groups of children responded to playing with marker pens under different circumstances. The study found that those who played with the marker pens for a promised reward later showed less interest in playing with them than those who had not received a reward. Essentially, it is thought that those who were offered a reward rationalized that they were playing for the reward rather than for enjoyment, thus inferring that they did not in fact enjoy playing with the marker pens, even though prior to the promise of a reward they had done. Simply put, if we perform a behaviour that we assume to be of our own free will, as a result of our own decision making, rather than due to external pressure, we will attempt to rationalise this behaviour, even if that means altering our beliefs. Now, I'm going to give a disclaimer here. When researching this video, I came across a fascinating article on psychology for marketers, which covers how the Viet Cong used this kind of methodology to change the attitudes of American prisoners of war. However, I was unable to verify the information through other sources. As such, I would like to suggest that we see this as anecdotal rather than factual. Now, regardless of whether or not the events described in the article are true, the results do seem to match what we would expect from having looked at the research. According to the article, prisoners were prompted to complete a couple of tasks. Firstly, they were asked to write a letter praising the Vietnamese government, and secondly, they were asked to read out the statements to other inmates. After this was done, the inmates were told that their presentations had convinced others, that their speech had changed the minds of other inmates. Now, once again, I have been unable to verify that this actually occurred. However, knowing the research and psychology behind the subject, I can tell you that if this did happen, it is a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. The final piece in particular is extremely potent in terms of belief. If we will alter our beliefs in order to rationalise our own behaviours, what effect do you think it will have if we are told that our behaviours have already altered the beliefs of others? Before going any further, I want to pause a moment to clarify something. I believe it is vitally important to be honest in our activism. I do not believe that using deception or coercion in order to achieve our goals is ethical, regardless of our intentions. I am not making this video in order to teach you how to manipulate someone, but instead to explain why certain forms of activism may or may not be effective. So, now that we've looked at the science behind this topic, how can we apply this information to improve our efforts as activists? Let's propose a potential way we could implement these ideas in reality. Let's say we're having a conversation with someone around the horrendous treatment of livestock animals. As an example, we'll use chickens in the egg industry. Now, there are many practices in this industry that are absolutely barbaric, but let's pick a specific action. In this instance, the murder of millions of newborn male chicks. Check out my first video to see how you may be able to instigate this conversation without too much pushback. Now, a lot of non-vegans don't ever give much, if any, thought to what happens to male chicks in the egg industry, and many people are horrified by the practice once they know the truth. In my previous video, I suggested asking for petition signatures regarding vegan-related topics, and while this is a behaviour that could have an effect, instead, what if we were to ask those we were talking to write an open letter, or to read a pre-written statement on camera, or to retweet a campaign message calling for an end to this barbaric practice? Essentially, we are asking someone to take part in activism, asking them to try and persuade others to end cruelty. Getting others involved in collective action is actually another huge driver of beliefs, one I may do a whole video on in the future. Essentially, we are asking someone to complete a simple action that will help enforce an internal belief that the egg industry is inherently cruel. Now, I wouldn't expect everyone you speak to be willing to carry out this behaviour. Unlike a petition with a very specific goal in place, in this example, the only viable option to prevent this cruelty would be to stop the consumption of eggs. As such, you can almost guarantee some degree of pushback from those who want to deny that their actions are inherently harmful. However, for those willing to take part, the psychological impact of carrying out even minor activist behaviours could be huge. As always, I'd like to thank you for listening. I hope you found this video helpful, or at the very least interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this topic, so please feel free to leave a comment below. I'm currently working on a couple of series with bit of a different format that I really think you're going to enjoy, so make sure you click the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out. I've added a link to a petition in the description below asking that the Department of Education provide plant-based milk options to primary school children here in the UK. It would be amazing if you could take a few seconds to go and support it. And once again, thank you.